Okay, so I think we are up and running. So cool. First and foremost, thank you everyone for joining in. I know there are different people joining from different continents, literally across the globe. So thank you so much for this. And I know for some of you, this would have meant managing a lot of other things on a Saturday. But thank you for this. Uh, Today, what I wanted to talk about is so this is a framework that I have created. Uh, this framework is based on my own experiences of having done AI for last 20 years. Uh, One of the big things that I have seen a lot of, or a one big mistake that a lot of teams tend to do is they tend to go after building the model from day one. I mean, especially in today's world, if you tell anybody, hey, you're not building a LLM, they almost judge you by saying that, hey, you are not even doing AI. Unfortunately, that's the scene. But what I wanted to introduce you is a framework of how do you go about building AI in the right way. Okay, this is gonna be a very non-technical talk. Anybody who has any ideas of marginal ideas also of AI would be able to understand this, right? But this you can see it in two ways, right? One way is to look at how does the gains or the capabilities of a AI system accumulate, or how does the return on investment is going to show up. You can also view this entire talk as what is the right process one should adopt if one have to build AI systems. Now, when I say build AI systems, for me, just a couple of qualifiers. One, uh, it is not about uh, machine learning metrics only. For me, a good AI system means being able to create business wins, which could mean revenue and market dominance, right? Uh, and second, large part of this is not applicable if you are part of research teams like the deep minds and the open ais of the world, right, which are trying to advance AI itself. This is applicable when you're part of product teams, when you're part of startups, when you're part of MNCs, and you're trying to bake AI into your product offering, which I think would apply to maybe almost all of us, if not all of us, right? So that's the broader context. Feel free to stop me anywhere. Feel free to ask any questions. Let us have this as a very interactive session. Okay. So with that, I'll get going. So I name this framework as AI Maturity Continuum. This framework have 3 steps in which you can understand how does the capability of a AI system matures, or how does your return on investments are going to show up. The most important point I'm going to drive across is how this is very, very different from the way the same thing unfolds in a traditional software system. Okay. Okay. So today, so this is the broad outline, right? We're going to look at the central problem statement, right? The central problem statement is every business wants to do AI, right? But a large part of those AI efforts never result in any business win whatsoever or any business outcomes. The answer to that lies in intersection of a couple of, I would say, fundamental pillars. Within that, one of the key points is how does the ROI curve or the return of investment curve of AI shapes up, right? Your key takeaway will be to understand one, how does this ROI curve in AI look like? Two, understand why is it so very different from traditional software development, and what are the implications of this, right? You will have a 3 step framework to conceptualize how should you apply on a day-to-day basis when you're developing AI system, like I said, when you're part of product teams. And there will be a lot of do's and don'ts across the entire talk that will help you to stay on course of developing AI systems in the right. Does that sound good? Okay. Quickly about me, my name is Anuj. I'm the founder and CEO of Gradient Advisors. Most of you know me. Today, me, I along with my team help a lot of organizations get AI right. Uh, we are working with a bunch of startups and MNCs across the globe. I've also had a chance to author a major book in machine learning. Just last week, the fifth version of this book also came out, which is in Polish language now, after English, Chinese simple, Chinese complex, and Japanese. Uh, Me and my team work across the entire AI spectrum, right from strategy vision on to even sales GTM. Even how do you set up world-class AI teams and nurture them. These are some of the logos that me and my team work with. Okay, with this, let's get going. Uh, and we have been extremely fortunate that our work has been endorsed by some of the very, very best in the world, coming from both academia and industry. This includes Carnegie Mellon, Google AI, people from DeepMind, Microsoft Research, Airbnb, Microsoft for Startups, YC Startups, and many, many more. Okay. What is the central problem today, right? So the way these advances have shaped up, right, especially in last 1.5 years, there are two key things that stand out where we are today. One, for most businesses, AI or Gen AI, I'm going to use the bracket term AI for everything, uh, is no more an option. Most companies have to quickly figure out how are they going to incorporate this in their product offerings. And in order to do so, most companies are investing billions of dollars. But at the same time, a very few companies are able to see any kind of ROI, any kind of gains. Right? Most projects end up saying that we have built a state of the art model which has X% accuracy, and that is where the entire journey kind of stops. What beyond it, right? And as founders, as senior leaders, we all understand, right? No matter how good a technology might be, if it is not able to create enough business wins, then it is it does not live up to its promise. And that can mean only two things. One, either the promise is a farce, or the way people are implementing it is not correct. Right? What I'm going to show you is that in AI, it's often the second case. We already have seen lots of companies, right from Google's, the Amazons, and the Microsoft, which have been doing AI for the last 20 years, to some of the most recent companies like Midjourney and the OpenAIs, right, which have clearly shown that AI, if done well, and AI, if done right, can make tremendous gains for your business, right? Which means if a lot of others are not able to do, then they are missing certain key ingredients. Uh, this topic, along with a couple of other topics, I teach as part of my workshop on AI readiness. This is almost a 2-day course that I do for CXOs. This is one of the key topics from where I begin the entire workshop, and hence I thought it will be good if I can share this with larger public as well. Okay. If I were to answer what's the single reason why most teams are not able to get to the returns, and for me, returns, like I said, means revenues and market dominance. I would say this image as a single way to describe it. If you look at most teams in industry today, they are single-mindedly hinging on models, state-of-the-art algorithms in today's world, LLMs, and trying to move forward, not giving much about are they solving the right problem, do they have the kind of data, do they have the right kind of AI strategy, do they have the right kind of AI talent, do they have the right kind of processes, and many other key ingredients, right? This is something, in my humble experience, the answer to the question lies at the intersection of four fundamental pillars: technology, processes, people, and economics, right? One needs to get all these four right, and at the intersection of the four unfolds what is known as AI magic, right? Uh, AI maturity is about understanding these four pillars. AI maturity is about understanding that modeling is often just the 10% of the game. Building a successful AI system requires a lot more. There are almost 30 parameters across technology, people, processes, and economics. Right. Today we are going to looking at one of them, which is AI continuum. Any questions so far before we go forward? Is the broader context clear to everyone?
Yes.
Cool. Uh, okay. So, what does intuitively, if I were to ask you, right, what does return of investment in a traditional software looks like, right? So if one draws a x-axis of time and a y-axis of capability slash return, the curve is going to look something like this, something like a hockey stick curve. Now, why is it the case? So imagine you are starting a software project today, right? And it will take you some time to understand what are the requirements, right? Uh, what is the timeline? What is the kind of team that you need to staff in and stuff like that. But once you're able to go past, and which is why the progress in this initial phase is going to be slow and low, but once you're able to go past this phase, the as we develop software, the capabilities, what that system is able to do for us, starts to happen very, very quickly. This has changed drastically in last 30 years. Why? Because today we have very mature processes, tools, we have years of experience, we have the playbooks, right? And with AI, this has gonna become much and much steeper, right? Uh, Today with AI, you can develop a large part of your UX in a couple of hours, right? It may not be the greatest UX. I'm not saying it is perfect, but at least as a V0, you can get a lot of things out very, very quickly, right? Now, because of all of this, the curve, ROI curve, or the capability looks something like a hockey stick curve. Everyone understands here, right? Why I'm also calling it a return of investment, because once your system is ready, you can then start to take it quickly to the market, right? You can quickly start to do the sales and other part of it, and it starts to show returns for you. In today's world, you don't have to wait for years and years, right, to be able to do that. Does everyone agree with this broadly? Okay. Now, any guesses what will the ROI curve in AI look like? Would it look like same, or it's going to look very, very different? Okay. So, and it turns out that the ROI curve for AI systems looks very, very different. Now, this is something a lot of people, especially who have an extensive background in software development, don't necessarily understand, right? I've often seen even across organizations, both early stage as well as MNCs, uh, who have still very similar expectations from AI teams as compared to their software dev teams, where they believe that things can be done overnight, right? What I want to show is that's not going to be the case. And that's not because your AI team is not good enough. The point is, there are fundamental aspects of AI because of which the way the curve behaves is very, very different, right? Uh, the way we gonna study this, we gonna break this curve into three distinct parts: O to A to B, B to M, and we'll try and understand this entire curve in greater detail. Okay. L1 is the acceptable performance. So this is the threshold when we believe that the system is good enough, we can take it to the market, where we can take it to the end users, or the predictions of the system can be shared and can be consumed by the end users. L2 is what is 100% automation, right? Where the entire system can run entirely on its own without any human intervention whatsoever. Uh, there are a couple of very interesting parts about this curve, which all of us would have noticed immediately. One, the initial part is lot more elongated. Then the curve rises and rises steeply, fairly steeply, but not as steeply as what we saw in the previous slide. And at some point of time, the curve starts to stagnate very, very quickly, right? While it tends to L2, but it never gets to L2, right? And it is in this curve lies the answer to the question, what is the right way to develop AI systems? Okay, cool. So let's get to the first part, right? So the way you should set up, or if you are going about developing AI system, the way you should do is first set up the broader game correctly, right? What is the broader game? You understand the business problem statement. Okay, in most cases your business problem statement is going to be vague, it's going to be imprecise, it will have a lot of edge cases that may not necessarily be baked into it. This is when you and your team will have to take the business problem statement and refine it, make it much more precise. The second aspect is to quickly question, is whatever problem you are solving, is this even an AI problem, right? Today, unfortunately, it has started to happen where people believe that anything and every problem can be and should be solved by AI. That's actually a very incorrect approach. If a problem can be solved without using AI, you are much, much better off. And I'll come to this point little later. Now imagine you have been able to figure out, okay, this, we have been able to define the problem statement. We have also been able to figure out, hey, that this problem is the right problem for AI as a line of attack. You need to start looking at what kind of a data is needed to solve the problem. Do you have the kind of data that is needed to solve the problem, right? If not, that is when you'll have to work across your product, your engineering, and start the data collection strategy. I'm not going to go into greater details over there because then it will become a separate topic itself. But this is one of those things where a lot of organizations make fundamental mistakes. We need to understand that organizations today who are pioneering AI, and you pick any of them, be it be Google, Microsoft, Tesla, OpenAI, ByteDance, TikTok, uh, Spotify, pick any of them, YouTube, they have all been data crazy from day one. It is not that it's only in last 6 months or 6 years. Right from day one of their foundation, they have been very, very gung ho and super focused on collecting data. In my experience, the most important part of O2A phase is when you should sit and set the right success metrics for whatever project you guys are embarking upon. Now, what does the right metrics means? One, of course, machine learning metrics. So imagine you're solving a classification problem, then you're looking at precision, recall, AUC, ROC, all of that stuff. If you're solving a translation problem, maybe you're looking at blue score or whatever are the relevant machine learning metrics. But one mistake that a lot of teams tend to do is they tend to stop with ML metrics only. This is where senior leaders have a crucial role to play, where they'll have to step in and say, no, we also need to define the business metrics. So if you are running marketing campaigns, maybe what is the click-through rate, what is the retention, how is the overall funnel looking like, and all of that stuff. Or if you are selling some translation software, how many people are buying your subscriptions? Is the overall uh, uh, number of people who are buying paid subscription? All of that is going up. And most importantly, what you have to figure out is, uh, as machine learning metrics go up, it should mean that the business metrics also go up. It should not be the case that you have set up two of these metrics correctly, but what you have not figured out is the orchestration between two of these metrics, whereas one of them goes up, the other also goes up. So this could mean working with your product managers to figure out, do you have the right instrumentation and do you have the right uh, sensors in which can measure the right metrics. So metrics and measure methodology, both you'll have to get it right from day one, right? This is, I mean, I can't stress this enough to say that most teams hardly pay any attention to that. For them, AI is all about start building state of the art AI model from day one. It just doesn't work that way, and I'll come to that point more. Sorry, I think somebody has a question. Yes, Sudhir, please.
Hi, Anuj. Thanks, especially for initiating and doing this. My question is, there are some times when the problem is you don't know the problem very well uh, due to different reasons. You are into a very very new business. AI itself is going into many different places, which is very very new.
Yeah,
So how this maybe the ML metrics could be with the AI engineers portfolio, and they know much better. But the business might be undefined, or vice versa. Sometimes the ML metrics is not known, the business metrics is known, or it could be both also. So then,
yeah,
how should we do
yeah.
take
So,
care?
couple of things, Sudhir, right? I mean, at the end of the day, whosoever is sponsoring this project at the highest level, right? I'm sure they are looking for some kind of gains in some kind of metrics. That metric will always be defined. I mean, you may not clearly know in your head, that's a separate story, right? But you might be looking at number of paid customers, you could be looking at revenues, you could be looking at entering newer geographies, whatever, right? But when a business undertakes an initiative, I'm sure they have some idea in mind what is that they want to gain out of this entire thing, right? That has to be part of those business metrics. Now, this might not happen on day one. I understand that part because sometimes you have to go a little deeper and then you have to come back and change, which is all fine. But no matter, not setting them at all is a mistake. That is what I'm calling out here. Right. Two, I would also differ with what you said that uh, the setting up of ML metrics is only that of a AI engineer's job. I believe that should not be the case. This is where even the business needs to whatever capacity they can get involved, they should get involved, right? So it's very similar to how we all measure our health, right? If we don't even know what metrics to care about and what metrics to track, we are just all shooting in the blind, right? Does that make sense? Okay. uh, then you have to look at larger design decisions, right? Whatever problem you're solving, does the system has to be real time? Can it be batch? Does your compute have to be cloud or on edge, right? uh, do you have any other constraints that the problem has, where maybe you are working on a domain whereby you're told upfront that the prediction must happen in zero point 0.1 second, because if it does not happen in this much second, xyz can happen, right? Or maybe you're working in a domain whereby no matter what prediction happens, explainability is a key part of it. You need to set up data pipelines. You then need to set up quickly what kind of a AI problem is it? Is it supervised? Is it unsupervised? Is it reinforcement learning? Whatever flavor it is, right? And this is where you'll a lot of people will find it kind of counterintuitive that I have just built a model, right? The way to do this whole is you set up the whole game correctly and just build a model, whatever is the simplest approach. That approach could be as simple as saying that I am going to do a coin toss. If it's a head, I'm going to say zero, otherwise, I'm going to say one for a classification problem. Okay, and I'll come to why I say what I say. Quickly deploy it and then test everything end to end. Now, this, whatever I have said so far, is very different from how a lot of teams are approaching today, right? And we need to understand why am I suggesting a different path or why the two paths are different. All of us come from business, or all of us come from background where we are leading uh, uh, various business units. We are leading organizations. We are startup founders. What is the hardest part of any of a problem, right? The hardest part of the problem is building a viable business. Building a business where you're solving an actual pain point. It's actually a painkiller and not a vitamin. Building a business whereby your customers will be willing to pay for whatever value prop you are proposing. Your customers will be willing to pay for it long. That means the LTVs are going to be fairly large. We all understand there is no point of building a business which is going to show some initial interest and then fizzle away, right? And given all our experiences, all of us uh, would also know that that is the hardest problem because there are too many variables involved there, which are unknown variables, right? We need to understand that AI is a way to solve a new way to solve a lot of problems, which until now mankind had no necessarily a good way to solve problems, right? So it's a new tool in our kitty, but that does not mean that we I mean, we start applying AI anywhere and everywhere without necessarily thinking. And the old age principle where you have to start solving the hardest problem upfront, which is not about building the AI system, right? And I'll also argue why building a very good model requires you to spend time with problem and data, right? Uh, so so the way to go about this is quickly set up the broad game, quickly build a model. This could be a linear regression, logistic regression. This could be a decision tree. This could be a off-the-shelf API that a Google or a OpenAI or anybody is giving. This could also be a bunch of humans and maybe giving predictions in real time. Doesn't matter, right? What you need to do is set up this broader game quickly. Whatever you have built, take it to the market, take it to your stakeholders, and start testing the waters, right? uh, Start understanding the early responses, right? Because that is where you will truly understand more about the problem statement when you start to talk to your clients, when you start to talk to stakeholders. Does that make sense? Now, typically what I've seen is this phase of O2A itself could be, I would say, in today's world, from 1 to 6 months, depending on how much AI maturity is there in an organization. Okay. And I've also seen majority of the projects fail in this phase itself. And I'll come to an example to illustrate my point, right? How many of you have heard of the following problem statement? I don't know about how many of you have worked, but I'm sure most of you would have heard, where some CXO in a company will come and say that, can you analyze what general public and users are tweeting about us and our brand and find out interesting insight for us, create a summary and few actionable items, right, for the CXO team? How many of you have heard of this problem statement or maybe even given such a problem statement to your teams? Okay. Why did I pick this particular problem? Okay. This is one of my favorite examples of being able to work with a very vague problem statement, right? Now, why do I call it vague? Because I've seen multiple teams attempting this problem in their orgs, having built those solutions, but I have not seen those solutions ever getting used. The primary problem being what is interesting differs from person to person, from CXO to CXO. What might be very interesting to a CTO will be very different from what is interesting to a CEO. What might be interesting to a CPO, what might be interesting to a CEO, so on and so forth. Right? Uh, Now, what do you do as a machine learning system? You can't go and serve every one of them upfront, especially in the initial V0 itself, right? So this is where you'll have to first sit with them. You'll have to try and define what is interesting, right? Maybe you'll have to create a data set of 100 tweets and tell them, if I were to give you these 100 tweets, or if I were to give you these 20 tweets, what would you like to see as an output? What would a CEO like to see as an output, what would a CPO, a CTO, all of them would like to see as an output, right? And then from there, try and see, help help them understand, right, that each of them have a different expectation. There is nowhere any system can serve all different expectations, especially upfront. Later on, maybe personalization and all of that is possible, but I mean that's a separate thing, right? So that is where you'll have to then sit and define some kind of a data set with them, that for this kind of a data, this is the output you're gonna see, right? Then quickly build a solution and take it to them, right? Show it to them. What does it even look like? And from there, start working on the feedback and keep coming back again and again. You can absolutely go ahead and build a state of the art LLM on day one. Very much possible, but is it going to lead you to business outcomes? Highly unlikely. Okay. Okay. So this is exactly what I was saying, right? Uh, One of the very good ways that you can actually uncover a lot of uncertainties about a vague problem statement is to buy before you build. If you can find a quick solution in the market that you can buy, use it for 3 to 6 months. This will really help you and your entire team, right? Develop a better understanding of what does we even want, how much is the utility of such a solution, right? A lot of teams that I've seen have a notion that we have such a great AI team in house. Why should we go about buying? Because building AI solutions does not come cheap. The hardware, the compute, the data sets, the talent core cost, all of this adds up big time. This is where I go back to the economics of AI, but for this talk, I'm not going to go towards that side. Buy a solution off the shelf, let the vendor do all the hard work. With that vendor, figure out the right metrics. With that vendor, figure out what is the true value prop that everyone is looking for, right? And then start taking things forward from there, right? Start building your metrics upfront, right? Start looking at what is the kind of right data that is even needed for a problem like this. Are we even solving a right problem? Is this the most important thing we should be looking at? So on and so forth. Okay. And like I said, right, at some point of time, build your own model. This model could even be something from outsource, right? So just to summarize, the most common mistakes that we have seen in our 20 years of journey is teams start building state of the art models from day one, right? They don't spend enough time in defining the problem statement where one fits and creates various scenarios to build a better understanding, right? Make sure if you are a CXO who can influence the culture in the company, make sure you let the AI team understand that they need to fall in love with the problem and not necessarily the solution. If a regex can solve the problem, that is far, far better than a state of the art LLM. Uh, and I'll just spend one more minute on this. I mean, I know a lot of people find this very counterintuitive because if you're not able to build a LLM today, it is taken as a question mark on your capability. There is a principle in machine learning that's called Occam's razor. Occam's razor basically suggests that if you have two alternative explanations for a phenomena, then the one which is a simpler explanation is more probably going to be the right explanation. The equivalent in the machine learning is if you have two models that can solve the same problem, then the simpler the model, the better it is. Okay. Spend time on building data sets and not just data. Okay. Data is often nothing but a dump, which large companies tend to do petabytes. They always claim we have petabytes of data. Reality is that a large part of those companies never have data with which you can actually work, or the data which you can convert into data set. Okay. I'll strongly recommend each of us should go back and read this particular paper. It's called Data Cascades in High Stakes AI. This is a paper by Google AI. I think it came out a couple of years back, from 4 5 years back. Okay. Another mistake that a lot of senior stakeholders believe, that if we are not building state of the art LLMs, we are not doing AI. I've already stressed on this point, and you should. One of the best examples of this is Netflix. I think a decade ago or so ran a competition whereby uh, they wanted a recommendation system which would be, I think, in terms of the metrics that they had defined, above 10 points. And the best solution, which actually won the $1 million prize, never ever was productionized, because the solution was far too complex to be able to productionize the whole thing. So simple is beautiful, simple is brilliant, simple is what works very well. This is also from a technical depth standpoint of view. Okay. Uh, if the V0 system is not 95%, it's absolutely okay, right? Uh, all of us come from different cultures, different backgrounds, but a lot of us have been raised in schooling environments where anything less than 95%, you are considered as an idiot. And we tend to take uh, that line of thought into our corporate worlds as and jobs as well. Uh, so I've seen scenarios where AI teams have built good solutions, but because they were not 95% and above, some CXO was extremely unhappy about the whole thing. Right? That's not the right way of doing it. And I'll come to. I am not saying you stop with 85% and not gun for 95%. What I'm saying is that don't have those kind of expectations up front. You and your team must focus on the hardest part of the problem. And the hardest part of the problem is not to build a state of the art AI model unless you are a research lab like DeepMind. The hardest part of the problem is, are we building something that solves a major pain point? So is it a vitamin or a vanity? Does it seem to meet the business objectives, what we are defining? Uh, would the would the users or the clients be willing to pay for it? If yes, then what is the kind of ticket value we might be able to extract out of it, right? What is the kind of LTV we can extract out of this offering? Will it be able to help us the high AI dev cost? Will it be able to help us offset large part of that? These are far more harder questions that one should focus upon. Uh, so these are my tips for O2A. Don't fret over accuracy upfront. Focus on testing the market, right? Utility of the solution. What is a realistic price point you can sell this on? Sell before you build. This is much more truer for AI as compared to, I would say, traditional software. Your focus should be on metrics and data in this phase and not model. And I'll come to the point of data also. A lot of you might be thinking, hey, I am just gonna be using a chat GPT or a Llama 2 or one of those models, right? Why is this guy talking about data? And I'll come to that point in the second half of the talk. Uh, in most cases, right, you another big challenge you will have is a timeline by the business. In most cases, business wants a solution to the problem yesterday evening, not even today, right? If you can buy a solution off from the market, that's a great way to start, right? Uh, don't see this as a way, uh, as a question mark on your or your team's capability, right? Uh, building AI systems takes time and cost. So you can really offset large part of that cost by buying it up upfront from outside, right? Last but not the least, this is advice that I give to all the ICs that I work. Uh, always build two solutions, one for your CV, one for the business. Uh, does the O2A journey make sense? I'm gonna take a pause here. I know in last 45 minutes I have spoken a lot, and a lot of this is gonna be might be very counterintuitive for a lot of you. So I'm gonna take a pause for 5 minutes now. I'm gonna invite questions, comments. A lot of silence. So either I have done a very good job or I did not make any sense. Which one of the two, folks?
No, like for me, this makes sense. Like totally makes sense. Like in the 0 to 1 journey, the main thing should be to launch quickly, build quickly, and then see whether we are building the right thing.
Correct, correct.
And if we are not, then we have to ch- change
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I would love to include another viewpoint, which is the economics of AI. Unfortunately, then this talk will become a 3 hour talk. So I'm going to do a separate talk, but uh, AI doesn't come cheap. AI comes at a bomb cost, right? And one needs to be very careful of this. So building a AI product is no different from building a startup. And like I said, right, the hardest part is not to assemble a team or raise funds. Those are all hard things. I'm not saying that. But the hardest thing is, are we solving the problem on which we can build a sustainable and a viable business for next 5, 7, 10 years, whatever that means.
Hi, Anuj. Thanks for the talk. Agree with most points. Uh, One issue that I have currently is that I'm working in a big corporate compared to, startups where you can just buy an external vendor or adopt an external vendor.
Hmm.
Uh, from your experience, have you had any issues where the external vendor does exactly what you want, but the pull is more to build something internally? And how did you sort of balance those two out, saying the vendor is actually the one that we're supposed to go for? Why are
Yeah,
we wasting our time internally?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I mean, this is a harder conversation inside at the, and again, it depends at what level inside the org that is happening. But one of the analogies that I have tried to use is that imagine you're starting or you're creating a new position in your organization for the first time, right? Right? And nobody has a clear clarity on what exactly this role is supposed to do. Each person has a different version of it. Do you really want to go ahead and hire a full-time person and then see where that lands, right? Because hiring is not cheap, right? And imagine this is at a senior level, right? Then it becomes all the more. What is your best alternative? Your best alternative is to try and bring in somebody as a contract worker for three months, right? And then see from there where it lands, right? Because when things are actually there on the ground, right, that is when a lot of uh, nuances about it tend to kind of emerge out, right? Okay, this wasn't the right expectation from the role. Maybe he or she should have been having such a skill. Maybe we didn't need an MBA, blah blah blah, all of that stuff. So that clarity happens when you embark on the path, right? Uh, this is how I have tried to do, whereby try and bring a vendor very quickly, work with the business, make sure you sit with them and you still do the most important part of O2A, which is define the metrics. The metrics has to be independent of whether you are building, you are buying, whether you are building a regression model or a LLM or maybe even a AGI tomorrow. I mean, who knows, right? But work with the business, help them quickly integrate that solution, get it going, have those weekly conversations with the business very closely, right? And see if everything is working out for them. If it is not working out, then see 3 months later, you can easily let the vendor know, hey, this is actually not working, right? And maybe we should meet again some other time, but for now, thank you, kind of a thing. This is going to be much less expensive than saying that, oh, we will do this internally. We will now hire four scientists, two PMs, one ED. We will have data. We'll buy GPU and all of that mumbo jumbo.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think the problem that I work in is currently very highly regulated environment. So
Yeah.
the issue is once we decide on a vendor, it still takes about 8 months to even get the vendor onboarded because a lot of the, where data exists, how is data
Mm,
getting pulled out
mm,
of corporate,
mm.
all of those things come into play. So it tends to be a long process. I just wanted to see if there's anything that I can speed up the process from your experience.
So again, Jitin, whatever I suggested is a generic answer, right? I mean, I think you and I can have a separate conversation where I think we'll have to go into a couple of details to have a better understanding, right? But generally, I have used this technique buy versus build multiple times, right? And it has worked beautifully in most of the scenarios.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Any questions? Okay, so sorry, I think somebody was unmuting and asking something.
Yeah, hey, hi Anuj. I wanted to ask, what do we mean by sell before you build? Like, how do we sell that before you build it?
I mean, build does not necessarily mean that you build everything from scratch. If you can quickly assemble a solution, this could be cloning couple of good GitHub repos, finding some outside APIs, just patch everything together, maybe orchestrate a demo, and a lot of us at senior levels have done all of that as well, right? It's almost like how an architect shows you a home even before they build a home, right? So they always sell you the home even before they have built it.
Understood, Anuj. Thanks. And also, onto this thing. So, why did you say we should have one solution for CV and the other for business?
So I've seen a lot of ICs in today's world where when you give them a problem, especially in AI, their immediate answer is, "Oh, I'm going to build a Llama 2 for it, or I'm going to do one of those stuff for it," right? Without necessarily fully understanding because they want to work on state of the art AI, right? But that's not the right way to build production grade systems, right? Production grade systems always have to live up to a test called Occam's razor. Whatever solution you have built, is it simple enough? Because in long term, maintaining such solutions is not easy. In today's world, even building them is not easy. Okay, so if you want to do a simple text classification, you need not build a chat GPT for it.
Okay, understood, Anuj. So, even would you consider that, let's say you have two CVs you have got and you are hiring for, say, AI position in your team. So, would you also prefer a person who has written some fancy model names in his project, or rather he would somehow explain how those business metrics are getting affected with his model?
Yeah. So I mean, I will give you just one answer, Atul, right? I mean, one. So in my humble opinion, one of the best products that I've seen in the AI world remains Alexa. I know in today's world, something like Alexa can be built very, very quickly, but imagine something like that 10 to 15 years back, uh, right? Uh, Last year, a large part of Alexa team was fired, not because they were not good enough. They absolutely built stellar stuff, but Alexa as a product failed to achieve its business objectives, right? Alexa has been reduced to, "Hey Alexa, play this song. What is the weather outside? How is the temperature outside?" Alexa wasn't designed and built for that. The business objective of Alexa was it will be able to contribute substantially to the e-commerce business of Amazon. The point I'm trying to make is you can have the greatest CVs of the world. We are all part of product teams. If you are not moving business metrics, uh, the work is a liability, right? How do I hire my team? That's a separate discussion, Atul. Maybe some other time, but uh, you need to give importance to first principles thinking over the most jazzy terms. And in today's world, especially, CVs can be written beautifully using Chat GPT. So this becomes all the more true.
Understood, Anuj. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
So while people are still mulling over O2A, we are now going to look at the remaining part of the curve. I thought I'll quickly take a 5 minute break. One of the questions that I got a lot was, what exactly do I do? And I'm going to give you a quick glimpse. So today I run a company called Gradient Advisors. We work with startups and MNCs in helping them unlock AI. AI's full potential. Like I said, today there is a twofold challenge. If you are not doing AI, there is a great risk. If you are not doing AI right, there is a greater risk. We've already seen there are businesses that have gone down overnight because of the way AI has moved, especially in the last couple of years, right? So it is important to do an AI that will lead to business outcomes and um, not just model metrics, right? So this is precisely what Gradient Advisors does. We work with startups and MNCs across the entire spectrum of AI. So right from vision, strategy, road mapping, data collection, technical modeling, implementation, even GTM sales and people aspects. Unlike many in the field, we not just focus on models, we also focus on business outcomes. Largely, there are three arms to our company. One is the L&D part. This is where we have very customized AI workshops, especially for the senior most stakeholders, because AI is not an IT initiative, which is the sole responsibility of a CIO or the founder. AI is an org-wide initiative, right? And the companies or the org need to have what is known as AI readiness. So we help organizations get AI ready. We also do very specialized workshop for verticals, which are say product engineering, AI teams, business HR. Like I said, each of them have a role to play. In our workshop, it is not that the HRs also sit and code, but they need to understand how do you set up the right AI teams? What are the best people practices? This is not same as the kind of practices one follows for software or for engineering teams, right? How do you start thinking of AI systems working in tandem with your traditional engineering systems? We do this for products whereby how as a product team you need to start conceptualizing and building AI and bake AI into your product offerings. The second arm of the business is the dev shop. This is where a lot of organizations come to us and ask very specific help on helping them develop models and systems. We work across vision, NLP, speech, data science, right? We work from requirements gathering until integration. The third arm is where we consult with organizations on a long-term basis. These are typically organizations which are AI first, so they want to build the entire capability in-house. And this is where we work with them on a long-term basis, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, helping them develop the entire muscle end to end, right from, like I said, strategy, vision until sales, right? And we guide their teams to build AI systems and start uh, impacting their uh, bottom line and top line. How do you assess our fitments? If you're looking for someone who can help you guide in AI on strategic planning, technology assessment, data first culture, identifying right use cases, technical execution, scale, PMF, people aspects, we are your right choice. Uh, Likewise, in the upskilling, if you need anybody who can come and talk to the board in their language, not in a machine learning language, somebody who doesn't talk of the equations and the code, but somebody who gives a broader perspective of how should the board even start thinking, or how should the entire C-suite executive should start thinking on AI. We conduct very specialized workshop for these kind of groups. uh, what makes us unique and more suitable? We are a veteran in AI, having done this for 2 decades. Uh, we have worked on all aspects across entire AI lifecycle. We have successfully incubated and led multiple teams at CXO levels. Right? We work extensively with both early stage 0 to 1 startups as well as Fortune 50s. Some of our work has led to acquisitions and IPOs. Uh, we have had we have had the privilege of authoring a landmark book in AI. The book is already translated in now 5 languages, has over 150 citations, endorsed by top leaders coming from Carnegie Mellon, UCSG, DeepMind, many more. So in short, we have been there and done that. So if you are looking for somebody who can come in and help you and guide on the entire AI journey, feel free to reach out to us. Okay, with that, any questions before we move to the second part of the talk?
Excuse me, Anuj, how long is this second part going to go?
So this is gonna go again 30 minutes, right? So now what we're gonna look at is A to B and B to M. What changes and how the entire dev process has to change accordingly. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was
Okay.
not really sure of that. Okay, thanks.
So, okay, so now this is where you are already at point A, right? You have already done large part of the hard work. You have understood the problem statement, you have set in the right metrics, you have started collecting the right kind of data, right? You have built a model, you have tested the market has shown positive signs, right? You have started to get your early customers, right? Some of them might even be paid customers. This is where, of course, you need to greatly enhance your AI capabilities, right? And now that everything else is kind of validated, it makes sense to start focusing on the model part of it, right? So this is where you focus on the model, right? You try various algorithms, you benchmark performance of each of these, right? You take the better ones to the production, you replace the old by the new ones, and then you start measuring the delta, not just across ML metrics, but also business metrics. This is going to be a journey, right? This again does not happen overnight. Why do you have to do this? Because you're almost doing a systematic search across the breadth of algorithms to find the simplest model that will do the job for you, right? So this is no different from a binary search in that sense of it, right? Across the spectrum of solutions that are possible. Uh, the reason why the curve gets much more steeper is that because you have done everything else already, right? You have already spent a lot of time and effort in this O2A. Now your gains start to go very, very quickly, right? Your models can quickly go from 70, 80 to percent to higher and higher numbers, 80, 83, 85, 87, 89, so on and so forth, right? And of course, at some point of time, you're going to cross the acceptable performance. That is when the entire system can start to go live in a big, big way. I'll also, towards the end, also touch how the chat GPTs of the world has greatly changed the shape of this curve, right? And that's an important point I'll quickly come to. Okay. So now what you're doing is you're iterating very, very fast, right? You're going from simpler approaches to complex approaches, right? Your iterations are gonna be much faster, right? Every time you build a model, you analyze the kind of mistakes your model is doing, and typically in that analysis also lies the idea for the next model, right? So this is typically about going from a model to the model, right? This is when you typically get highest ROI per unit effort, right? Towards the end, I'll also briefly touch upon, maybe a separate talk we'll do, but this curve has huge implications on the kind of talent that you need to hire. The kind of talent that you need at O2A is very different from A to B as compared to B to M. I mean, one of the mistakes I've seen a lot of founders do is right on day one, they want PhDs to come in and start working on their AI problem. In most of those cases, 6 months to 1 year down the line, the PhDs leave. Both the sides would have burned the bridges heavily, and we'll come to those details. Right now, time-wise, this phase can be anywhere between 3 to 12 months, depending on the complexity of the problem, depending on the amount of data that is needed. Right, some of those variables. But I hope broadly one is clear why does the curve suddenly almost stands up vertically, if not at 90, but maybe at a 80 degree or something like that. Does that make sense? Okay. Now what happens? Okay, I think in the interest of time, maybe we can skip this for example, right? So one of the common mistakes is people start to use most recent or hot algorithms or popular algorithms over time tested ones, right? Uh, a lot of ICs don't tend to analyze very carefully the kind of mistakes the model is doing, right? This often contains clue to what might work, what should be your next approach and make it work, right? A lot of teams don't tend to do rigorous evaluations. right? Uh, Rigorous evaluation is uh, uh, is that you one set up very comprehensive test sets, right? You set up right metrics, and then you have the right methodology, right? There are a lot of subtle mistakes that a lot of teams tend to do this, because of which the entire dev can go haywire, right? Uh, so this is almost like a horse racing that you do iteratively over and over and again to find the best horse and then take that to production and the next one and the next one and the next one. Right, this we have already talked of, right? At this point of time, you also have to start building uh, the other aspects of AI system. So I talked of model is often the 10% as compared to the system, right? A lot of people don't necessarily understand that one needs to bake in what are called as feedback loops. So you continuously are collecting whether data on whether the predictions are working for the users or not. You have to bake in what are called as control loops. There will be time when your system will start to produce haywire predictions, not because there is a bug, because AI systems by definition are stochastic in nature. Uh, you need to build a very specialized UX for AI systems to handle the mistakes gracefully. There's something that I found that a lot of product teams are not often aware of, right? And unlike software 1.8, right, AI systems are not just integration of systems, but it is the integration of systems, people, processes, and metrics to be start to show before you can start to show returns on tangible gains. Okay. Coming to the last part, uh, this is where you have gone fairly advanced stage, right? You already have maybe a V4 or a V7, a version 4 or a version 7, or maybe even a version 10 of the system in place. I'm saying a system and not just a model, right? This phase typically happens only when the problem that you're solving, the AI problem that you're solving, is at the very core of your business. So you have absolute clarity that if I'm able to move ML metric, say by 0.2%, then my revenue is going to gain by 5%, 7%, right? So think of something like a Bing search or a Google search, right? So typically, Bing search teams on a quarterly basis takes a target of trying to improve the search system by 0.1%. Now, why does it matter to them? Because a small increase in the ML metrics can lead to substantial increase in terms of the revenue. So this is where your teams are trying to push the system performance to its limits. This is where you're not just uh, using algorithms, you're developing new algorithms, right? This is where often your teams will enter into academic partnerships with professors and their PhD teams, right? Because you're already working at the limit, right? You're trying to push that ceiling, right? You're trying to develop newer algorithms. Often you'll find your team writing a lot of equations on the board as opposed to just coding, creating newer mathematical formulation from grounds up, right? There are times when if the problem is very crucial to the business, right, uh, then you might even create multiple teams attacking the same problem, while a client facing team might try to improve the accuracy by 0.2% over next 3 months. You might give a similar target to a high caliber PhD saying that, hey, you need to improve this by 2%, but across next 1 year. But the problem statement remains the same, right? Time wise, this could be anywhere between 6 to 18 months, right? Again, depending on the problem, depending on the value of the delta. Most AI projects never get to this stage uh, itself. Does this make sense? Okay. So where does this lead, right? Uh, like I said, most AI projects seldom get to this stage, right? Most projects And successful projects seldom go beyond even B phase, right? Because often in industry, even a 90% accuracy can be good enough. Again, this is not a generic statement. It it all depends on the problem that you're solving, the kind of solution, the value prop, right? Going beyond makes sense only when the problem at the hand is at the very heart of your business, right? So imagine the LLM that a mid journey is using today, right? It makes absolute sense for them to be able to improve that LLM by 0.01%, right? But that is the very heart of their business. The 1 to 2% gain in the AI capability will move business metrics big time. 5%, 10%, 20% gain directly in your revenue, in your number of customers. So all the top line metrics that your organization cares about, right? There are two important things to be remembered about this phase. So one of the points I made is that uh, B2M starts to stagnate drastically. Now, why does that happen? So AI lives in long tail of edge cases, right? No matter how good your AI system is, there will always be couple of edge cases that it is not able to handle. And as you try and go after those edge cases, as you try and push the model greater accuracy, right? What you require is better data sets, you require better compute, you require more compute, and you require better algorithms, right? So instead of seeing an exponential improvement in performance, what you see is for a marginal improvement in performance, the effort and the overall ingredients, there's an exponential increase in that, which is why the curve starts to stagnate, right? So today, if you look at, for example, self-driving cars, right? I know, I mean, we all know that self-driving cars have been around for kind of last 5 to 6 years, right? 2018, 19, kind of that wave started. But if you look at the best of the best teams and an average team today, they're all very similar in terms of the capabilities of the system they have been able to build. Why? Because all of them have now started to run into this long tail of edge cases. And the progress over there is remarkably slow, right? Hence, the curve starts to stagnate very, very quickly. This is a very crucial point. Is this clear to everyone? Okay. Okay. I've already said, right? Uh, right. So in this phase, it is all about going back to the drawing board, revisiting every single assumption that you made right from problem definition to point B, right? Like I said, if the 2% gain even worth, it all depends on how much is the ROI out of it, right? Because that 2% gain in ML metrics is going to come at a very high cost, right? This is where you'll have to get the best in class PhDs, the professors, the data sets, massive compute, massive R&D. Sorry, somebody had a question for me. Neeraj, yeah, please.
So, Anuj, when we are talking about these data sets or solving a problem, we start with a sample of data,
Yeah,
and then we reach to some conclusion, and or we reach to a point that where we are not seeing any improvement on whatever the algorithms we are using. So we
yeah.
decide to increase more data and more data. So is there any way of deciding that how much data we need to solve the problem, or what should be the quantity of the data with what we should start?
Hmm, hmm. So, Neeraj, the answer is not binary, unfortunately. So, there
Mm,
are theoretical limits, but these are all theoretical limits. This is no different from saying that linear search is order n. What does that even mean, right?
right.
It doesn't mean 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. I mean, that's a so there are theoretical limits. The answer typically lies in this key thing. So you have to carefully, this is where the metrics and the evaluation process comes extremely handy. You have to figure out what are those kind of edge cases that tends to your model tends to make mistakes more. Then you
Hmm.
need to figure out why is that happening. Typically, you will find that your data set does not have enough examples. I mean, I'm not saying always, but
Hmm.
typically. This is where you will go, and for that particular scenario, right? So it could be a man walking on a bright moonlight on a rainy day. Whenever such a scenario is there, most probably self-driving, I mean, our self-driving solution tends to assume the man is the pole, and kind of that kind of a thing happens. I mean, I am just making up example hypothetically, right? So that is when you'll add lot of scenarios around that particular piece. Now you'll solve one of those edge cases, maybe, right? And then another, and then another. The problem also lies with the fact is today, if you look at all the AI that is there,
Hmm.
it's an optimization problem. So in the larger landscape of data, we want that point of parameters where we will get right for most of the data points, right?
Correct.
There's a separate debate altogether, and that's a separate conversation. Does the human brain work like an optimization or not? Right? Typically, we don't. So we remember our older mistakes, and we also correct our newer mistakes and incorporate that learning without affecting the previous learnings.
Correct.
Machine learning doesn't work that way. So if you take a data set of mistakes it's making and update your model on that, you'll start to see that while it might get the accuracy might increase for the newer points where it was making a lot of mistakes, but there
Hmm.
will be some other older points which it was getting right earlier, and now suddenly it has started to
Getting
have it wrong, right?
right.
So that's also, so this is a more fundamental thing, but which is why you need to be aware of this curve. You need to understand, oh, I've started to enter this territory, and now I need to be much more
Hmm.
judicious about should I even be pushing things forward or not.
Correct.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
makes sense.
So, any other questions before I come to a key point? Okay. So now a quick question is like, what does the world of ChatGPT? I mean, we all know, right? It has completely transformed the way AI is seen, right? What I want to show and discuss is how the ChatGPTs of the world have affected the curve, and hence have also affected the entire dev process of AI, right? So the most important thing is today, if you want to build a solution, you don't even need a AI team. Technically, a very smart product manager and a very smart business leader can sit, hire a bunch of engineers who may not necessarily be what are called as AI scientists, right? Do some prompt engineering, get a V0 version out using that prompt engineering, right? What does that mean? It means that in the shape of the curve, you're able to get to a very acceptable performance very quickly. That is the shortest possible path, right? Which is this point, which is purple, right? And from there, you can always build a POC, the version V0, and then do everything else that we were doing, which is take it to the market, test the market, and all of that stuff, right? Does it make sense? Okay. Now, what about the remaining shape of the curve? Now, at some point of time, you'll find that so chat GPTs of the world are generic systems which have been trained over entire internet, right? If you are working on a very specialized a very specialized problem that does not require the general GK of the world, you'll start to see that the chat GPTs also start to make a lot of mistakes. As a matter of fact, one of the most interesting examples is if you go and ask, I don't know whether this is still fixed or not, but go and ask chat GPT what is heavier, 1 pound of stones or 2 pounds of feather. And it will argue that this is a very interesting question. This is a trick question. I know the answer. The answer is 1 pound of the stones is better, and it also gives a reasoning for it. Right now, imagine you're trying to build a system that has to be able to reason out. The point I'm trying to make it, at some point of time, you will find that the off-the-shelf systems that you can use. This could be a chat GPT, this could be a Llama 2, this could be any other model that is out there, did whatever it could have done for your problem, and now you have started to reach its limit as well. Now, if you find that the problem is still core to your business, what's your only option? Your only option is to push the system from there onwards. What is the way to push the system from there onwards? You'll have to train your own models. Correct? There is no other way. And if you have to train your own models, you'll then have to go and do the hard work that we were doing earlier in O2A, which is collect the data, understand the problem statement better, and blah, blah, blah. Some of it, like metrics and all, you would have already done, even with the chat GPT, but some of the other you will have to do, which is where the curve shape now resembles as if you were at point A. Oh, does this make sense? This is a nuanced part. Is everyone clear about this? Some
Yes. Yes. Can you just repeat again?
Yeah. So see, with a chat GPT mind, right? What has changed? The thing is, you don't necessarily even need an AI team to be able to build any kind of model or anything. I can just go to OpenAI, just put in some credits, get the API, and a smart product manager and a business leader together with some prompt engineering. For that, you don't necessarily need scientists, right? You can quickly assemble a solution, right? And you would remember that the whole objective of O2A was to assemble a solution, right? But because of the chat GPTs of the world, the amount of intelligence it will have is going to be much higher. Hence, I have not merged it with point A. I have shown it higher than even acceptable performance. Great. So now you have quickly built a solution. Now you're taking it to the market. You're giving the demos. You're selling it. Which if today, if you look at large number of companies that have raised seed, all of them have done that. Maybe seed and maybe the next round also, I would say. Correct? And you are now showing it to the market. You are now getting the traction. You're also getting the paid customers and all that. But now that whole problem is becoming core to your business. So you need to push the boundaries. While this is acceptable, this is not good enough, right? You now need to get greater accuracies. Now, in order to get to the point, what is your next logical step? Okay, maybe I'm not going to train my model. I will train some of these LLMs and try and fine tune on my own data. Great. You are able to push it little further. Okay. Is my arrow visible? Right. Now, what do you do? At some point of time, you find that you have no option but to train your own models, which means you will have to go back and do the hard work of data collection. You'll have to do the hard work of understanding the problem statement from first principles and all of that stuff. So the shape of the curve that was here, now, if nothing but it has moved to here. So now your journey will be same because now you're developing your own models from first principles. Does that make sense? Okay, and which is where you will see in next 2 years, if a lot of these companies that have raised large amount of funds and all that do not start working like a AI first company, because today all of this is 100%ly patched and built on the open AIs, right, and the other APIs of the world, right? It will only take them so far. The journey from there onward will become much harder, and they'll have to come back and do all the hard work. Okay, so in a nutshell, the point I wanted to drive across is when you're building AI systems, the way the capabilities accumulate for a traditional software system versus the way it does for an AI system are very different. So there's a big gap between what a lot of people expect and how AI systems unfold in reality. Does that make sense? Okay. Interestingly, the continuum also helps us understand, and this is a point we'll try and cover in another talk, right? I'm sure some of you might have even heard of that. The profit margins of AI companies are nowhere closer to the way SaaS companies are able to operate, right? That entire phenomena can be explained using this continuum, and I'll come to this. I'll come back with a separate talk on this, but this is a very important thing. A lot of founders today believe that AI systems can be built and you can operate at 80% profit margins the way a typical software works. The reality is you'll never be able to go beyond 40%. And that has huge implications on your entire business, right? The second point, and I just want to park, is the three phases that we saw, O to A to B, and B to M, has huge implications on the kind of talent that you need to hire for that phase. I'll try and cover both these points in two separate talks, maybe sometime in future. Okay, these are some of the references. I'll strongly suggest this is still very much true. I know a lot of people will think, why am I suggesting an article from 2014? I believe this article is even more important than today, I would say, as opposed to year and a half before LLMs came. Okay, so if you get time, please go back and read both these articles. Uh, most of you are from community. If anybody is not from a community, I also run a community for senior stakeholders, where the idea is to create a more mature ecosystem at the highest level, right, at the level of the CXOs and the boards, so that all of us can collectively make the most of this disruptive technology. You can either go to this link or you can use this QR code. Okay, I'll take questions. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. Anuj, I have a question.
Yeah.
First and foremost, thank you for explaining a lot of things in a very crystal clear manner. We are getting a better clarity. I'm trying to build an AI model which will help me to come up with the right pricing approach, say for new deals, new opportunities, or also for product or service launch. More so from a service-based industry. We have the relevant data, but what could be my starting point? I'm still struggling to come up with the starting point to start building up the AI model. So if you can just throw some light or guide,
Okay,
that could
again,
be the
we'll
right
have
question
to.
to ask during this session.
No, sure. I mean, so again, I mean, it won't be possible for me to give a very specific answer because I need to understand a lot more context, right?
Yes, yes, yes. On a very high
Maybe,
level, if
okay, if you can start with even some basic rules also, it's not a bad start. I would suggest the next approach should be take a chat GPT, feed all this data, do the prompt engineering, and see where it leads you. That
right,
itself will
got
be a
it, got it.
great starting point. This is not an easy problem. Again, I have not been had a chance to look in any of the intricacies, and I'm sure the devil lies in the details. But
Yeah.
start with a model, test, right? The point you want to test first is, if I go to the market, am I even solving a pain point? Or you will realize that, oh, there is a more bigger problem in the market that actually I should be going after. So it's no
Yes,
different from
we
that.
figured out this problem exists because we are also in the same
Sure,
situation. We face a lot
sure,
of challenges when we are losing deals and all. Even
sure.
after putting all the right efforts, couple of weeks goes into the preparation, coming with the initial cost, price, and all, but still we lose out. So we are
Yes.
trying to build up
Again,
a
I mean,
model.
I'll have to understand when you say deals, are you saying from a VC perspective, or these are in the open share markets? Again, I mean, what are you,
Yeah,
where,
okay.
what,
Deals in the sense like pre-contract scope of work from business finance perspective.
interesting.
When you
I think,
tender, when you know,
yeah, yeah, I think Moin, it will be good if we have a separate discussion on it, right? But I would suggest today, if you can take your data, feed it to Chat GPT, do some prompt engineering on top of it, and see where does a three day effort lead you to, right? I would say
sure,
that itself could be a very good starting point, right? And
excellent.
that's
Thanks for the
precisely
suggestion. Yeah,
the point I was making, how the Chat GPTs of the world has impacted this curve.
got it. Right. Excellent. I'll touch base with you also. I'll do this part
Yeah,
and then come back to you. Thanks
sure.
so much.
Any other questions? Okay, so okay, I mean, I'll be around here for some time. right? Because I understand there might be open-ended questions and stuff like that. For now, I'm gonna stop at least the recording part of it, right? I'm around. Thank you so much for your time. I hope this was of use. Uh, I would strongly suggest, as you guys are developing AI systems, keep this framework and keep this curve in your mind. In my journey, when I started, unfortunately, there wasn't much AI itself around to help. I kind of figured out this on my own, and uh, this has helped me a lot to at the highest level to kind of plan out the entire AI project, right from inception until making it move the business leaders big time. So I thought I should share whatever little I have learned and I've gained. I have not seen anything like this in the world. Also, if any of you come across something similar, please do share it with me. I'll share a write up in the community so that all of you will also have a something handy to go back and read and kind of use this in your day-to-day work. Cool. I'll end the recording, but I'll be around on this call for another 15 minutes in case anybody has any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Anuj. Thanks for your time. Thanks for
Thanks, Anuj.
sharing
Thanks,
your
everyone.
all the details.